Welcome to the Adventures in Learning podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Diane, and I am so excited to welcome beloved nonfiction author Candace Fleming to the show today. If you haven't been paying attention, 2026 has already been an incredible year for Candy Fleming. She recently won the 2026 Children's Literature Legacy Award, as well as the Margaret A. Edwards Award for Young Adult Lifetime Achievement. And she is one of only 3 people who has ever won both of those awards, joining the ranks of Jacqueline Woodson and Walter Dean Myers. In addition to that, she won for Death in the Jungle, Murder, Betrayal, and the Lost Dream of Jonestown, which was the YALSA Award. And Candy Fleming is the reason that I joined CBCC and wound up in South Africa. So I am so excited to welcome her to the show. It's going to be such a great conversation. Wonder, curiosity, connection. Where will your adventures take you? I'm Dr. Diane, and thank you for joining me on today's episode of Adventures in Learning. So, Candace Fleming, welcome to the show. This has been like an amazing year for you, and it's only just started. You are one of, I believe it's 3 people who have ever won both the Legacy Award and the Margaret Edwards Award, and you're in really good company. I mean,
oh my goodness, yes.
How does that feel? What was it like when you got that call?
Oh gosh, which one? I got the Edwards Award call first on a Saturday. My family we were in Puerto Rico with my family. I was actually driving in a car, and I picked up the phone number. Answered the phone. Is the same time my oldest son goes, "You shouldn't answer spam." And it was like, well, it's too late. And I answered, and it was the Edwards Committee. And, they told me this amazing news, and I cried and laughed and then cried. And I think tried to tell them my story about, they just caught me when I was buying a new beach suit. And I think back and I go, wow, that was really confusing. And they probably want to take it back now because I was just really, I'm crying. I cannot stop crying. Who knows what I said, really. But it was amazing. And then afterwards, I hung up, and then the YALSA Excellence in Nonfiction Committee called. Seriously, like 10 minutes later, I was still holding my phone, getting ready to call my editor, and they called to say that Death in the Jungle had won. And again, I laughed and I cried and I laughed. And then I called my editor. So on Sunday, Eric, jokingly says to me as we're heading to the beach with the family, he goes, "So, did you get any calls today? Did you win anything?" And I'm like, I think that's it. I have a teen book this year. I think that's it. And so we are Sunday night ordering pizza, and the Legacy Award people called. And I was like, what? And I didn't cry, but I laughed hysterically, maniacally, I believe is what my son called it, because it was so absurd. That's how I felt about it. This is ridiculous. This is absurd. This can't possibly be. But I guess it is. They haven't called to take it back yet. So yeah, it's crazy. And then I did an interview with School Library pretty quickly, School Library Journal. And she told me that, one, I was the 3rd person to win both, but I was the first person to win both in the same year. And I thought, well, no pressure. Really, I'm like, this is absurd. I'm still a bit overwhelmed. I'm still trying to wrap my head around me. It's me. So.
Well, it's such a lovely honor, and especially given the body of work that you have given us. And it's such rich and varied work. As you said, this year you've got a teen book out. And I think last time you and I talked, you were in the process of working on that book.
Oh, gosh, I probably was. I worked on it forever, didn't I?
Yeah, because it wasn't out yet. And you were telling me about sort of the inspiration and where it had come from. And, you've done stuff for the littles, you've done stuff for the middles, and now the YA world as well. That's kind of a huge legacy to leave.
Thank you for saying that. It's nice to think it's a legacy. I guess it's a legacy. Look at it. You can tell I've still not figured this out. I am a little worried that having won both of them it's sort of like publishing's way. Now, Candy, you're done, right? You should be done now. But yeah,
I
no.
was gonna say, I don't think that stopped Jackie Woodson. She's still going
No,
strong,
no,
so I think you can
and
keep
Walter
going.
Myers, I believe he kept going too. Yeah. Can you believe that? Walter Dean Myers and Jacqueline Woodson. That's some kind of crazy right there. So
That's
yeah.
crazy good company to be
Mhm.
in.
Mhm. Yeah. And then
So do you
we're
give
gonna
a talk as part of this? Like,
my goodness, I have a big speech, Margaret Edwards speech, and I give the speech for excellence in nonfiction. But then I give the Legacy Award speeches given at Newberry Caldecott. So,
so have you started thinking
oh,
about it?
I have been. Yeah. I haven't written anything yet. I've taken some notes. I'm just thinking about it. Well, we've talked before, Diane. That's my
Yeah.
process anyway. So I have to think on it. I have to figure out what it is that I want to say with this a little bit of time. And I haven't quite figured out how I'm so marvelously blessed by it yet. So, like I said, I still sort of wrapping my head around it all. But yeah, it
Well,
was a
and it
crazy,
takes
crazy
time.
day. It does take time, doesn't it? And I get a little bit of an imposter. Okay, I got a real big imposter syndrome going. So, yeah, yeah. So,
Well, if you ever need to, just hold a mirror up and realize that you don't need to have imposter syndrome,
hey,
feel free to reach out. I will gladly remind you how good you are.
I will. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I love that. And, it's got to feel really good to know that what you've done matters to people. But you were just telling me, you're out doing stuff with kids.
Mhm.
And generally, kids aren't like, oh, wow, you won this award. They're more interested
Or
in your
less.
books.
Yeah.
So, as you're out doing your author visits right now, what are you guys talking about? What's going on in the world of kids?
Oh, we're talking about writing and we're talking about ways that they can do research and ways that they can write. Like I'm talking about a lot of nonfiction. It's usually what I go and talk about now. Today, we talked about doing our own research, being curious, asking questions, how nonfiction is about sharing the love, that it's about passion, that you write a book of nonfiction because you love a subject, you do passionate research, and then you're so in love with you love the topic so much, you want everybody else to love it too. And then you write this book and it's not boring like the encyclopedia because you want people to actually read it. And that's really what we're talking about, you know?
And
So,
they're responding?
oh gosh, yeah. They are like, ooh, I want to write about this and I want to write about this. Like the olders today we talked about books where curiosity starts and where it can end. And I show a couple of my books. Where did honeybees start? Simply by seeing a bee in my yard, watching it for a little bit, and then realizing I didn't know anything. I Google quickly. I'm gonna pick up my phone, right? Google, find a fact. The fact grabs me. I have to ask another fact, and then we're off. So yeah, and then you can ask them what if they had their choice, what topics they would write about, and it's always interesting to me what they'll choose.
Oh, I love that. And
You know,
that's so
today was
engaging.
Pomeranians.
Pomeranians?
I don't know. The one little girl hand shot into the air, and if she had a chance, she would write about Pomeranians.
And now I'm intrigued because I know absolutely nothing about Pomeranians.
I said to her, here's your chance to make me love a Pomeranian, to make me own a Pomeranian. Do your research and write me a passionate book about Pomeranians. Yeah.
What a
Yeah, they
cool
laugh when you talk
challenge.
about nonfiction and passion. They don't generally put the two together. So I feel like I'm the cheerleader this week. And I got a lot of littles this week. Last week I had high schoolers, but today's littles and tomorrow too. So
I was going to say, and do you have a preference? Because as we talked about, you write across the spectrum. So, you can connect with the audiences of all ages. What's the difference between working with the littles and working with the high schoolers?
oh, the littles is far more directed. It's far simpler. It's me telling a lot. Right. Me doing a lot of storytelling to illustrate a point. I don't have to do that with like middle school and high school. And instead, you just bring in the goods, a really great, true story. And you talk to them about how you found the information. And I guess I do still, I guess I do storytell with the elders. I just tell it differently. I'm not going to do imitation of an elephant for the high schoolers, although I might someday.
So they might really like that.
They might really love that. But yeah, so that's what we talk about. And then we talk about like my four paths of research, those things that they can follow themselves, that sort of stuff. But yeah, and the same thing, the idea of curiosity, passion, the need to know and the need to share what you discovered,
And I think that that's so important.
Yeah, I think so. I think the whole idea of curiosity, I think the whole idea of research for them has gotten, we're sort of teaching, especially for olders, I think we're teaching retrieval instead of research. And retrieval is not fun for anybody, right? I don't want to
No.
retrieve either. But it's that second step, that what am I curious about? What questions does that spark when I ask those questions? But what do I really want to know? And there are no bad questions, right? In fact, the bigger or weirder the question, the better outcome you're really going to have. So.
And how does that play in an age of AI?
I haven't quite figured that out yet. I don't know if AI is going to sort of choke that off, because what I love about nonfiction, or what I'll keep encouraging people, good nonfiction is not about just a bunch of facts, right? Good nonfiction actually has something that the author wants to say with that particular piece of science or that particular piece of history beyond the learning factor. And it's how the author looks at that information will determine how it's presented and what that author has to say with that information, right? So that's very personal. And I'll talk about research with them too and say, my research is really personal and it's completely organic and it's all about me, right? So somebody else might start with the same topic and end up someplace else and may even draw different conclusions than what I will draw, and neither of us are wrong. I worry that with AI, some kid will just put in, the question, what is the importance of, knowing about Jonestown? And the AI will come up with whatever it comes up with, which does not lead towards individual thinking or original thinking. Right.
Right. And asking that next question about, well, why? And, what if this had happened? Would that have changed the outcome?
Right. Yeah. You want them to figure it out. What's the importance? I don't want somebody, some other entity to figure it out for me. That's what makes original writing. That's what makes really good. This is what makes good fiction too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with AI.
Yeah. I've just been thinking a lot about that lately in terms of, what's that boundary and how do you channel something that ought to be a tool and not let it take over that creative process, the questioning, the wondering, because I think that's part of what makes us uniquely human.
Oh, it is. It is. And I think it'll be particularly interesting to see how it affects nonfiction, because again, I'm going to say, so often we think nonfiction is just sort of fact retrieval. And in fact, it's not. It's actually, I think it's as imaginative a process as fiction. You just have to imagine back, right? And then not make anything up. So
yeah,
I think it's going to, I'm not sure how detrimental it's going to be. I don't know. We'll see.
It's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out for sure. Imagine a space where curiosity drives innovation, where empathy fuels collaboration, and where learning feels less like a task and more like an adventure. My message isn't about adding more to your plate. It's about changing how you see the plate entirely. I'm Dr. Diane Jackson Schnorr, and through the power of purposeful play, I equip leaders, educators, and organizations with the tools you need to unlock creative problem solving, deepen human connection, and build resistant ecosystems of empathy and innovation. Attendees will walk away not just inspired, but empowered, with immediately usable strategies to spark curiosity in teams, to lead with empathy, and to infuse learning into their everyday cultures. You'll learn how play isn't child's work. It's the secret weapon of the world's most effective leaders and change makers. This is not a feel-good talk that fades by Monday morning. It's a movement, a shift in how we engage people, solve problems, and lead meaningful change. My talks and workshops are shaped by decades of experience in education and a transformative message that connects across sectors. Whether your audience is corporate, educational, or nonprofit, they'll leave ready to rethink what's possible, both personally and professionally. Because when we learn and lead through play, we don't just change organizations, we change the world. Check it out at drdianeadventures.com. You know, we were talking earlier, and I owe you a huge debt of thanks because it was our conversation that led me to apply to go to South
Oh,
Africa.
good.
And I am so grateful to you for modeling going out and exploring and seeing the world and bringing that back.
All right.
I was curious, we've both done it, how did South Africa sort of influence your writing? What kind of stories have you brought back from that? Anything you're working on?
I am. I'm almost finished now. I'm actually working on a huge book about rhino poaching. So it's solidly middle school. And I think too often the story is poaching bad, conservation good, right? Poaching bad, rhinos good. And that's pretty simplistic. And so I went back. I mean, I went with Wild Tomorrow, like you and I both did. And then I went back the following fall and I took wildlife forensics class. So I'm your girl if you want me to secure a wildlife crime scene or mark evidence or pick up evidence and put it in the correct bag, pick it up correctly and put it in the correct bag. All of that's, all of that. Fingerprints, I learned to fingerprint. Yeah, it was pretty cool. So I learned how to do that. And I got to talk to a lot of rangers and I got to talk to a lot of guys that work for the South African police and for the South African Park Service. So we got to talk about things that they had seen, events that had happened with them, with rhinos, what was happening in national parks, what's happening in reserves, that sort of thing. I actually have interviewed some poachers. They would prefer their names not to be used.
Can I understand that?
Just like there are several rangers who have spoken to me that would prefer their names not to be used. And there are, a couple of other people, like even the people at the orphanage who we know,
Right.
The carers at the orphanage and the manager prefers me not to use their real name. And that's those people, poachers, I mean, not poachers, but rangers and those who take care of the babies. Those people, that's just about protecting the animals that they're taking care of. So it really is. It's become a very complex, really complex story. So it simply follows one of the babies whose mother's poached, follows the baby from when it is taken to the orphanage to the day that it is released, rewild. And then in between then, we're going to follow whatever kind of justice there is for the mother. So what's happened to the mother? How did we process that crime scene? How did that horn get out of South Africa? Why did it get out of South Africa? Who wants it? Right? How, where did it go or where could it possibly go? I can only speculate, but I can tell you the places that it would have gone. And and what's happening in villages and what's happening. I mean, it's really a big story about colonialism and apartheid and about opportunity and about South Africa itself, which is really a country of fences, right?
Right.
And so it's turned out to be a really big story.
It
And of
sounds
course,
fascinating.
as I always do, I ended up with a much bigger story than I thought I did. So, yeah.
Well, my mind is swirling as you're talking because I'm remembering talking to rangers, and I remember being there for the dehorning of a rhino and holding that horn in my hand before they locked it up and realizing that when you look at it, it really is a fingernail. Like it's
hair. It smells like burned hair when you cut it off, right? It
But
does.
yet, as you said, it's much more complex than that. Like, it's not just good and evil. There are all these complexities of need and
No, especially on the ground. It's not just all good and it's not just all evil. And I also didn't realize that the majority of white rhinos in the world, yes, I knew that they are almost all of them are in South Africa. What I didn't realize that is almost all of those South African white rhinos are actually are owned by breeders. They're actually rhino breeders.
Wow, that's interesting.
Isn't it? So they're privately owned rhinos. They're not zoo animals, but they're privately owned animals. And South Africa, I mean, what they would like to be able to do is, I mean, rhino horn it's a renewable resource, right? We don't really need to kill the rhino to get that horn. And these owners would like to harvest the horn, which they have because they dehorn their own rhinos for safety's sake. They would like to harvest that horn and sell horn legally. And so far, they've not been allowed to do that. And just recently, there was a law. I have to do some more thinking about that and ask some people. But just recently, at the end of 2025, there was a law that allowed one of those rhino farmers. He can actually sell that horn internationally as long as he has a certificate. I think that's how it is from the government. But there's been some appeals. So rhino horn can still be sold within South Africa. That's legal.
I don't know that I didn't know that.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And why are people so obsessed with rhino horns?
Most of it goes to the Asian market. Most of rhino horn goes to the Asian market. And it used to go, well, for a while, it went to the Middle East. It was going to Yemen. And the Yemenis had this obsession with these traditional knives, and they wanted to have a rhino horn handle. But Yemen has sort of fallen apart financially, and so they can no longer afford it. So the market for Yemen completely dried up. So now most of the horn goes to Vietnam, and a lot of it ends up in traditional medicines, Asian medicine, traditional, the idea that rhino horn can cure cancer or hangovers or a slew of stuff, stomach aches, fever, you name it. Supposedly it has this magical medicinal property, which of course it does not. But a lot of it now is simply become status. So it's a status thing for super wealthy people. So they grind it if they have, they grind their rhino horn in their little dish with water and drink it if they have a hangover and they claim it's better, but only super rich people can do that. Or they are making bracelets out of rhino horn, little statues we're literally pushing a keystone species to extinction for tchotchkes, right? Because, that's exactly what's happening. And you do have some very wealthy businessmen who are buying whole raw horn. They are holding it as an investment. Talk about cynical. So they are waiting for the day that the rhino is extinct and there is no more horn. And then horn becomes the most, and it is now, but it becomes the most valuable commodity in the world because of its scarcity. And that's sort of where it's at now, which is why rhino breeders are saying, or rhino farmers, I prefer, if we are allowed to sell our horn, it won't be scarce, right? So there won't be a black market for it. But other people argue that the black market will just make theirs cheaper. I don't know about the reality of that. And I don't think anybody really does either because it's not been tried yet. So
is there anything hopeful that you found as you've been doing this research within the rhinos?
Sure, the conservationists, the people that are out there every single day doing that. What I always say is doing our jobs. They're doing our jobs, and they're doing them on they don't have any money, really. They're doing it on a shoestring, right?
Right.
They are saving our world and our animals for us. They're making no money, and they have no money, but they're using what they've got, working hard, and they are, saving baby rhinos and rewilding them and paying for new forms of monitoring for rhinos and new fences and, all of it. Dehorning, right? Which I don't know, you probably saw it, but
yeah,
last year South Africa had a 16% reduction in rhino poaching. And then that was in 2024. And 2025, they had another 16%. So that's 32%. And
That's hopeful.
that's hopeful. Yeah. Yeah. And most of those rhinos that are well protected are on the reserves as opposed to national parks. Yeah. So there's hope. And there are other things people have thought about. There's something about isotopes that they can inject. They can actually inject into the horn. Doesn't hurt the rhino, but changes the horn's color so that people know if they buy it, they're probably going to get sick. I mean, I don't think they'll die, but they'll get sick.
That's really interesting.
It is. It is.
Wow. So it sounds like that's been a all-consuming kind of project for the last couple of years.
All-consuming, yes.
I know when you and I talked before, you talked about how when you've got a project like that, you're generally also working on something a little bit lighter. What are you working on to sort of balance?
Life. Yeah. So I'm working on, I have a book about, actually my father's story. And I know it's like a World War II story, but it's actually his story about the Battle of Attu, which nobody knows about because the army didn't want you to know about it. The military didn't, government didn't want you to know. Is that we were actually invaded by the Japanese during World War II. Alaska was, and the islands were held for about 18 months before the Americans were capable of being able to push them off that island. And originally the military said it would take 2 days. It was going to be very hard to do. And it ended up taking months. And it becomes the second bloodiest battle in the South Pacific after Iwo Jima. And it's a battle nobody knows about.
Wow.
Right. And my dad was a medic. So it's really his story. So it was super fun. So I got to do my own family history for a change. So I did research on my own family history and, the 9th medical division. And yeah, so I learned a lot, but it was much lighter then.
That sounds really
I know, horn.
interesting.
Mm-hmm. It was really interesting.
I love the way your brain works. It's always fun for me to sort of hear where your interests have taken you. So that's very fun.
Yeah.
All right. So one last question for you. And it's a question I always end with. What's currently bringing you hope?
That's a good question, isn't it? Because I'm feeling a little hopeless right now.
It's a hard question, and that's part of why I keep asking it.
What's bringing me hope? What's bringing me hope is that I keep meeting so many people that are looking for hope, that are working for little things. I mean, okay, Minneapolis brings me hope, right?
Yeah.
My own neighborhood with the signs that I see brings me hope. The fact that, I live in Chicago, so the fact that my neighborhood actually has a text string to help us protect our neighbors, right? And that we carry whistles and that everybody's part of that and that we actually remember that. And what I love is that you meet people in some neighborhood restaurant, and we'll say goodbye and we'll say, take care of our neighbors. It's just become this thing, take care of your neighbors. So I think that gives me a lot of hope,
and we take hope where we can get it. I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Candy.
Sure.
I can't wait to hear your talk. And
I can't wait
we'll have to touch base once you've got it written because I would love to be able to highlight that for folks later.
Sure.
But thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah. And thanks for looking in my mirror here. My weird dark room. It's really a cute place, but okay. Thanks, Diane.
Thank you. You've been listening to the Adventures in Learning podcast with your host, Dr. Diane. If you like what you're hearing, please subscribe, download, and let us know what you think. And please tell a friend. If you want the full show notes and the pictures, please go to drdianeadventures.com. We look forward to you joining us on our next adventure.